I did not complete my verb study, and I want to do that with the two Johannine verbs that we were discussing earlier, embriaomai and tarasso. So first, embriaomai. In John chapter 11, this verb is used as Jesus comes to the tomb at Lazarus, as we noted, and he stands before that tomb. And I just have to get the text here so I can read it. And it says, chapter 11, here we go. In verse 33, Jesus saw that Mary or Martha, I have to look back in the text, Mary was weeping, and all the Jews with her were weeping. And it says that he became, and your translations can read troubled in spirit. And I want to note here that there is, with this verb in Greek, a sense of violent rage. Okay, and the question is that behind what the Johannine writer is doing? Is there some kind of violent rage here being expressed by Jesus? And so first, let's look at what Bauer, Gingrich, and Danker suggest. With this verb, as we can see in Mark 1:43, it's to insist on something sternly, as to warn sternly. So Jesus tells the leper, don't tell anyone. He embriaomizes him. Don't tell anyone. So stern warning. It can be used as an expression of anger or displeasure, and the lexicon suggests you see this in Mark 14:5. He said to them indignantly. Okay? Now, it can also mean to feel strongly about something, or you can translate this as to be deeply moved. So the question here is, with regard to this particular verb, are we to bring into it the notions that would be found in Greek with regard to violent rage? Now, in the earlier studies of the word, and I mean back at the turn of the 20th century, we have a tool we use called Moulton and Milligan, and it's the vocabulary of the Greek New Testament. And in this particular volume, they have, again, this is 100 years ago, the newly discovered papyri, which are using the words that we used to think were Holy Spirit created words. No, we found them in the papyri, everyday language, Koine Greek, in other words. They suggest this: we can produce no fresh evidence to throw light on the meaning of this difficult verb in the New Testament, but the Septuagint usage, and here they cite Daniel 11:30, Psalm 7:12, and Isaiah 17:13 in the Symmachus translation, is in favor of the meaning of am angry, express violent displeasure, perhaps with the added idea of within oneself. Okay? That's 100 years ago. Now, about 40, 50 years ago now, maybe a little longer, I think this was published in the 60s. This is Matthew Black's book, An Aramaic Approach to the Gospels. This is 1967. An Aramaic Approach to the Gospels and Acts. Matthew Black suggests that this phrase, to be embriaom in tonumity, to be here in John 1:11, to be troubled in spirit, is actually a Syriacism. It's not an Aramaism. It's not from Aramaic. It's an expression that can be found in Syriac, because to use the word embriaomai with the words tonuma, to be troubled in spirit, that's not good Greek at all. And so Matthew Black suggests we're dealing here with an original Semitism, that is something expressed in Aramaic, Hebrew, Syriac, the Semitic languages. It's being expressed in that language, and then it gets translated into Greek as embriaomai tonumati. Here's what he says with regard to this particular text. After all is said and done, and he's compared various terms in Syriac and otherwise, he makes it clear, the wider use of the Syriac expression makes it clear that the Syriacism, embrimesa totonumati, in verse 33, need not refer to violent rage at all. And similarly, in verse 38, Embryomenos may have the sense of being deeply moved. But this meaning's already conveyed by verse 33. Etaraxen ha'auton, he was moved in himself, starasso, stirred in himself. There's that other verb that we've mentioned before with John 5, now here in John 11, it'll be in John 14. He says, with the recognition that we're dealing with a Syriacism, that is something from Syriac that's been translated into Greek as the story's told, we are left with an intolerable tautology. And he says, as he translated, he was deeply moved in his spirit and he was deeply moved in himself. And finally, to conclude this, he says, how this unusual phrase arose must be a matter of conjecture. What is important for our understanding of the Johannine verse is the recognition of this expression as a Syriacism. On this point, I do not entertain any doubt. And Matthew Black was one of the finest Aramaic scholars of the 20th century. And he says, and the consequent possibility of an exegesis which rules out any ideas of paroxysmal rage or indeed of anger of any kind. Okay, so when we come to this particular verb in John 11, we want to pay close attention to what's happening here. And we don't want to necessarily bring into John's semantic domain meanings that aren't part of his vocabulary, because we do not see Jesus as a raging figure in the Gospel of John. We just don't see that. And of course, we don't see it in the synoptics either, but then you have all the historical Jesus people out there who are very confused. So that's that verb. The second verb is this verb tarasso. Again, we did deal a little bit with it with regard to John 14. Don't let your hearts be stirred up or troubled. And it has to do with inward turmoil. Disturbing, unsettling. So if you had a pond that had clear water and you were to disturb the bottom with a stick and the silt was to come up in the water, that's tarasso. You're unsettling things, okay? So Jesus says, don't let your heart be unsettled. Or in the Lazarus text, he was deeply moved and his heart was unsettled, okay? I would suggest that the reason for the use of those strong verbs is perhaps twofold. One, Jesus is both deeply moved and unsettled that the one that he truly loved had died. You could certainly suggest that and not turn Jesus into some kind of raging figure. He's just grieved. He's deeply moved. Second, it's also possible on a Johannine level that the writer is suggesting that Jesus, being deeply moved and disturbed, is aware that in doing this particular sign that he's going to do, raising Lazarus from the dead, is going to bring about his own death. And this sign and Jesus' death are intimately connected already. A little bit later in the text, where after Lazarus is raised, the chief priests and the leaders hatch a plot to kill Jesus and Lazarus. Isn't that interesting? Jesus raises him from the dead, and we think, no, we got to kill him again. It's amazing. Religion is amazing. So you have those two verbs used, and neither one of them suggest any kind of anger or orge at all. So I wanted to make that little note, that etymological lexicographical note here for you. Okay, cheers.